Yes, in case you're wondering what's a nice biostatistician like myself is doing at a mathematics education workshop, I'm coming off the back of a 20-year career at the University of Canberra. A lot of teaching of undergraduate statistics, a lot of interest in statistics education growing out of that, and also outreach to schools and mathematics classes, including instigating the running of Pi Day activities at the Uni of Canberra, and some of your schools might have been involved in that. All right. I too am starting with a quote which guides a lot of my experience in my career in statistics, which goes right back to 1915 from H.G. Wells, saying that the time may not be very remote. I think we've definitely arrived and probably skated straight past the time when being able to think in terms of maxima and minima, in being statistically competent, is as important as being able to read and write. So the range of literacies that H.G. Wells was referring to, I think, are well and truly upon us. And more recently, another quote which I really love, which comes from Hal Varian, who's one of the economists at Google. And about 5 years ago, he was saying that the sexy career for the next 10 years, so we're right in it now, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind if you extend statistics back towards mathematics as well. You would never have guessed that computer engineers would be it in the 1990s, and I think he's absolutely right that maths and stats have their time in the sun right now. I'm also very pleased to bring just one tiny quote from a couple of the New Zealand researchers in mathematics and perhaps more specifically statistics education, Chris Wilde and Maxime Fancook there. I think New Zealand has always managed to be just a little bit ahead of the curve in mathematics and statistics education, and I'm actually kind of quite proud to say that. And you know, they're not the only people who've said long live the data revolution, but I'm glad I was able to find a quote from a short report they wrote recently, very recently, for a magazine called Chance. And so today what I want to do is to highlight for you, if you haven't stumbled across these already, and I'm very grateful to Judy to mentioning the stats poster competition from the National Statistics Secondary School Project competition straight up. If you haven't come across these before, I'm delighted to be able to tell you about them today and just give a sense, I hope, of where they might fit into to your curriculum, and creating links also across to other subjects taught in schools. So I'm going to start with the newer of the two competitions, the National Secondary Schools Poster Competition. It's supported by the Statistical Society of Australia and links into the International Statistical Literacy Project. That's the ISLP that you see there on the website. This competition reached Australia through a project which is funded by, largely at the University of Newcastle, a Government Office of Learning and Teaching project that is looking at inspiring mathematics teachers through a whole variety of initiatives and projects, so the starting up of this international competition with its Australian arm is part of that University of Newcastle project. And they did very well to start off. They only started in 2014, and by the end of 2014 they already had an international winner in the Year 9-10 division. So that's called the junior division of this competition. It is for high school students, so years 7 to 12 only, and it was a great way to begin for them to have an international prize winner at that level so early in the competition. What you see there are their certificates and the cheque that they got for winning in their division. And my next slide actually shows what their project was. And this is the main reason why my presentation is 13 megabytes, because the poster copy that's circulating around the judges and so on is a very, very large PDF. There's obviously way more detail than can be seen properly on one screen. So I'll just talk about some of the sort of characteristics of that project that would have made it a winner. Even without being able to see the detail, there are some characteristics that do sort of pop out, and then we can move on to looking at some of the benefits that these project competitions put about themselves. And so we see that it's a topic broadly from science, the deterioration of teeth in liquids. This may or may not have been something that was going on in a science classroom. It doesn't have, the winning projects don't have to be something brand new. Indeed, when I think back to my own career in science fair competitions, I think one of my school friends did dissolving of teeth in Coke then. So these ideas, many of them have been around for a long time, and that's quite okay. There's a lot of visual detail, a lot of visual attractiveness to these posters, and the winning ones have put in a big effort on getting the visuals attractive and engaging. But for all that, they've also got a solid statistical background. So a research question's been posed, data's been collected, it's been analysed correctly and appropriate for the level of knowledge of the students, and we're not asking for multi-level modelling from year 9s, but appropriate methods are used and presented, and then the conclusion draws it all together at the end. So working through the poster, you can see their subsections, their aims, equipment, some pictures of the actual experiment that took place, a nice little graph there, and then the conclusion section also quite clear. If you look at the website of the National Secondary Students Statistics Poster Competition, you'll find that many of the benefits are stated at quite a high level, and I think some of this is due to the kind of overarching project that this poster competition is part of, and so they want to try and set this competition in that broader framework of inspiration, relationship building, practical opportunities, inspiration and enrichment. These are all operating at a fairly high level. But I think we should take from that underneath that, there's actually some really practical things going on in those benefits about getting groups in classrooms involved in collecting data and answering questions that are of real interest to the students who pick their own particular topics. I'll be talking a little bit later about guidance and ideas for topics for these sorts of competitions. And there's also I think, going on under that, what was the one I wanted to highlight? One of the particular aspects of this project competition, which hooks in a little bit with the ideas about scientists and mathematicians in schools, is that if you participate in this project, each group of students is linked up with a volunteer statistician or mathematician who is able to mentor that project along. And so that is one of the special aspects of this project, is that they have funding to support a mentoring scheme as part of students' participation in the competition. The older competition in statistics, which has been running since around about 2005, is the Australian Statistics Competition. It started life as a local initiative in Queensland and was offered to school students just in that state, and was run by a collection of university academics in that state. It has since broadened out to be a national competition. It's been mostly run by volunteers from the university sector and the Statistical Society of Australia again as well, up until quite recently when the Australian Maths Trust took over the organisational aspects. And so I think that's reflected in the most recent version of the competition's website that you see there. So it does appear under the whole Maths Trust suite of competitions, so that the maths competition, obviously extremely well known, also extremely long running. This competition starting to build up a bit of a history, and now supported by the Maths Trust in terms of the organisation of getting information out to schools and receiving entries back in. Another one of the points of difference of this particular competition is that it has also, I think, moved with the times in terms of the way in which student groups can provide their reports, their competition entries. So whereas in the past it's been posters all the way, and we used to have, as academics involved in volunteer judging for these competitions, you'd get a pile of poster rolls appearing in your pigeonhole with these very physical poster items with bits of paper stuck down on them, arriving for you to judge. This competition has moved with the times, and now it accepts entries in the form of PowerPoint presentations with a limit on the number of slides and the number of megabytes, just to keep things under control. And they've also trialled more recently allowing for videos to be presented as part of that electronic competition entry. And we already saw today with Bronwyn's presentation how embedding a video can really add to a presentation, and that's something that we don't want to restrict students from being able to do. They're probably, a number of them probably cleverer than the academics who are judging these things at embedding videos and using that kind of technology to enhance their presentations. So there are some points of difference between these two competitions, and today what I wanted to do was to offer them both up and just explain a little bit about them, and offer you the opportunity to choose one or the other, or maybe both. What I have here is just one slide which comes from the winning presentation, the PowerPoint of the Year 9-10 entrance in 2015 from that competition. So rather than sort of trying to put up all 12 slides that they sent in, I've just grabbed the results ones, as it perhaps is the one that has the most visual impact, and you can see that they've really had a go at using appropriate graphs and a nice table also to present the data that they collected. Basically, if I remember rightly, a survey of the fears that their classmates had about various different things, falling the dark, so on and so on. This slide, like the one for the statistics, the national competition going into international, I've just lifted from the website the text they have about what they see as the benefits of the competition. One of the ones I really want to point to there is the word relaxed, because this project competition is completely different from the maths competition that we all know and love. There's no timed aspect to it. You're not sat down to do a test. This is project work that, sure, it has a deadline, but it's at your own pace, and I think that's an important aspect of both these competitions. Because it doesn't have to be like this. This particular poster lobbed into my Facebook recently, and I thought, yeah, actually this has a lot. There's a lot I could actually say about this, which of course was intended to be a joke about science fair and poster and project competitions. But there's actually a lot of really interesting statistical questions that poster raises, and since the 3-minute sign's been waived, I might have to skate on and leave you to think about. It does raise a smile, but there are aspects about operationalising turmoil. How's the data collected? What was the sample size? What's with that graph? How come the conclusions seem very much broader than the actual data which is presented? There's a lot that we can take from that poster that also brings a smile. I have 2 slides now that also probably raise more questions than they answer, and in the short time that I've got, and I hope these will be made available for you to think a little bit more about these sorts of issues, and we've got the panel discussion coming up too, I guess, as well. I think really what all of these competitions and poster and project productions and going on also to think about, so mathematics by inquiry, I think what they're all trying to do is get at either thinking statistically in the context of these projects and poster competitions specifically, but I think also we could broaden that out to thinking mathematically. What does it mean to think mathematically? I've got a few ideas up there about what I think it means to think statistically, and some authors even will separate out the idea of the concept of thinking mathematically or thinking statistically, and mathematical literacy or statistical literacy. And the one at the bottom there is probably the one that I want to just highlight, since I have restricted time left now. Just yesterday on the news, there were 2 items that came up on my radio station, 666, and maybe you picked up on these too. 2 things. One was the story about the researcher in Queensland who's done 3 years' worth of research on 50 years of data about shark attacks. And his report claims to show that there is no benefit in shark nets on beaches. So a big quantitative study there with a big claim. The other one that was on the radio station in the same morning was a report of a little piece of research coming out of America that people who work in messy kitchens eat more. So if anyone's looking for an idea of a project for either of these competitions, there's one for you. So that stories like this float past. I've got lucky today. Yesterday there were 2 reports of great interest and uncertainty that could be turned into an inquiry or a competition entry. And that won't happen every day, it might not happen every week, but I think these are the sorts of things that we can all be alive to and listening to our radio stations and watching our news feeds and looking out for these sorts of things to enrich our mathematics and statistics classrooms. I'm sure those links will be made available to you if it's all seeming a bit overwhelming. There's information to support teachers in terms of the local competitions. Also, the American Statistical Association has a lot of advice about poster and project competitions. They've also been running these sorts of things for a very long time as well. I'll leave you to be to Google those further resources, a bunch of places that I found really useful for inspiring the statistics aspects of mathematics classrooms. And so in conclusion, a lot of messages there sort of all flooding in, but if you get an opportunity to think about these sorts of things later today and in the weeks to come, do consider integrating one of those statistics poster or project competitions into your mathematics class. And the idea of integration has already come up a couple of times. This might be your big opportunity to try and integrate mathematics statistical concepts into the other subjects which are going on at your school. It doesn't have to just be science, could be business, could be psychology, could be geography if that's the subject taught at your school. There's lots of ways in which mathematics can filter into all sorts of parts of the curriculum. So that's my last slide. Thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Alice. Questions for Alice?
Hi, Alice. Just before I ask the question, just popped into my head when you talked about sharks. I thought a really interesting inquiry would be what saves more lives, shark nets or mosquito nets. But anyway, the question I wanted to ask you, the poster competition, does that then feed into BHP Billiton, into the national competition, and then perhaps into Intel, into overseas? Is there any pathway for that?
I'm not aware of links with either of these competitions, with either BHP or Intel. No.
Just when you talked about it looking like science fair projects, the science fair things do feed in through the states, and so.
Perhaps I should talk briefly about the structure of the competitions. They are assessed at a state level, so. Both of those competitions have judges who assess projects at a state level, and then state winners are sent on electronically to be for a national winner to be selected, and then for the international one, then those national winners got sent on again. So not attached to the science fair structure though. This is completely separate.
Do the posters need to be interactive type, technology posters, or can they just be plain cardboard?
The posters can just be plain cardboard. They are judged electronically though, so if a group has produced a cardboard poster, take a photo of it and that's what gets sent in to be judged. So there's no requirement to be whiz bang. That teeth one was essentially just a flat 2D presentation became a PDF and still went on to win. Yeah.
Alice, I have a quick question. Similar to the one that I asked Bronwyn, do you keep in touch with the winners of these projects, or is there some sort of like alumni or community of winners?
That's probably the one thing we haven't been that good at. At the moment, both of these competitions are largely run on volunteer work, and it's probably tended to drop off the priority list. But the Maths Trust does maintain databases, so there's probably an opportunity there for someone to go back and do some work in that direction.
Any more questions for Alice? Okay, please join me in thanking Alice.